Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's podcast, I have an excellent topic. We are talking about leadership in workplace, but also leadership in life. That was supposed to be a question in case you missed it. Today, Jevon Wooden is going to educate me and the community all about leadership. So, welcome to the podcast, Jevon.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Crystal.
I am so glad you said yes to this. I've done a couple podcasts about leadership in the workplace, but never in life.
I
So
think they go hand in hand.
I think they go hand in hand because if you can't be a good leader in life at home, how can you translate that to the workplace? But we'll get into that. We'll
Yes,
get into that. Those are just my thoughts thinking out loud. Where in the world are you, Jevon?
I am in Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Rochester, New York.
Okay, and you got to Texas as quick as you could?
Yeah. It took me longer than it probably should have, but I'm here now and I'm loving it.
Good. Okay, so Jevon, what is your definition of leadership?
My definition of leadership stems from John Maxwell. He says that leadership is influence. And I love that definition because it means that we are all capable of being leaders. It is not tied to a specific title or position. It is just about stepping into the fact that you are influencing someone or something.
And what about effective leadership? Or is that like one of the same? Is
No,
effective leadership and leadership one and the same?
it's not. It's not.
Okay.
So, effective leadership really starts with clear vision and purpose, and not just for yourself, but also being able to convey what that clear vision and purpose is. Because a leader's charge is really like a long-term vision, making sure that it's sustainable and successful. In the first place, they typically start with is with their people. Ensuring that one, they have the right people to make it an effective goal or task.
Right.
Then the second component of that is ensuring that everyone understands why it's important for them to perform their specific task at a level of excellence, and supporting their people to ensure that they have the proper resources, they are at their best so that they can give their best, and then also making sure that they make space for feedback.
Jevon, can you give us kind of your background? How did you get into the space of leadership?
That's a great question. Question, Crystal. So I started with leading myself first. So I grew up Rochester, New York, as I said, and I got into some trouble just trying to find my way. And that trouble, it really caused me to change because I was sitting in a jail cell.
Okay.
And I sat in that jail cell facing an assault and robbery charge, facing 7 years in prison at 17 years old. And I had an epiphany. And that epiphany came in the form of my mother and my older sister, Chandra, coming up to the jail to visit me, and just seeing them behind that closed glass and not being able to touch them, but seeing the pain that I've caused in their faces sparked something in me. And when my mother said a couple words to me, she said, "Hey, I put up the house to get you a lawyer because I didn't want you to have to get a public defender, because you know what happens when public defenders get involved. Probably gonna have to do that time." And what that meant, I didn't really think about it in this way at that time. But what it meant was, if anything went wrong, they could have wound up homeless. I have 3 sisters and a brother, and then I have my mom. So I went up to that jail cell that night, and that was my inflection point, really, where I just said, you know what, this ain't for me. Even if I didn't do whatever at that moment, I was guilty of doing other things, right? So just trying to survive. So that shift into a leader happened to get me out of that survival mode and come into a moment of, let me step into my power. I may not have all the money in the world, but I am intelligent. And I also know that I have heart and resilience and persistence. So that's the first formulation of me even understanding what leadership was from that influence standpoint. And moving forward, I was struggling just to find a way, and I was working 2 full-time jobs. One of those happened to be at a hospital where there was a army recruiter who was moonlighting on the weekends.
Okay.
Said, "Hey, you should come down to the army recruiting station." And I said, "Cool, I'll be there Monday." So Monday I went, and I did great on what they call the ASVAB or aptitude test. Was able to get any job I want. So that automatically triggered like, oh, I'm actually smart. Right? I can get any
Yeah.
job I want because I did well. So the military was that second inflection point. And that inflection point really opened me wide open when it comes to leadership, because I was able to step into positions I once weren't confident, because they force you to do things that you're uncomfortable with, like leading other troops and teams.
Okay.
Saw the power of making sure that I asked for feedback on how I could be a better leader. I listened to other people's perspectives and ideas, because I didn't always have to have all the answers. And the third thing was the power of really tapping into that why from my standpoint, and then understanding the why of people in my charge. Why are they getting up to do this job day in and day out? Why are they showing up even though they have other things going on to do this role? Why do they feel like their job is meaningful? Because we know for sure that there's two things that keep people going. One is meaningful work, and the second is recognition. So I had to know how to recognize them and how to keep them driven on the task. So that's what got me into this work. Just being able to see and tap in for myself, from the self-awareness, self-management standpoint, and then understanding how I can convey that and really help other people step into their power and purpose.
Well, if anyone is destined to have this conversation about leadership, it's definitely you, Jevon.
Well, I
Definitely.
appreciate that, Crystal.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so what characteristics do you think someone needs to be an effective leader?
First one is empathy. If you don't have empathy, you don't understand. You think that your way is the highway, or you can't see how best to support your team. Or you won't even ask the right questions because you probably don't care. You may be sympathetic, where you're like, oh, I feel for you, but get it done anyway. Or you may be apathetic. You might just not give a damn and just be like, hey, get it done. I don't care what it takes for you. I don't care if you got to miss time for your family or whatever. But empathy allows you to step into their shoes, so to speak, but doing it from a level as a leader, from a superpower standpoint, because I'm going to anticipate your needs. I'm going to want to ask the questions. I'm going to make space for psychological safety, where you can share ideas and let me know if you're not at 100%, so I can support you or provide the resources for you. And it just makes it a complete difference. We're saying that now in the workplace, leaders that are empathetic, even the hard decisions like layoffs, they do it in a different way. And they're able to provide support to those people that they have to make that hard decision to let go. And people appreciate that. Whereas the other side, we're seeing leaders doing Zoom calls like, hey, today is your last day, good riddance. So there's a real difference, even when it comes to the decisions that are tough that have to be made. You still convey why it needs to be made, and that you appreciate all the contributions, even in the adversity.
What is the difference between managing people and leading people? We see this question everywhere. And I mean, they break it down to the finest of the hairs, but you are the expert here. So I want to hear, what is your definition of managing people versus leading people, Jevon?
Yeah, the simplest definition for me is managers focused on tasks, right? They're going to get things done. They're focused on that short-term goal. They're not really long-term oriented. They just have to get this immediate thing done to go on to the next thing. So they focus on tasks and processes. The leader is focusing on the people and the vision. So they want to ensure that they have everything situated for 3 to 5 years out. They want to make sure that they have that sustainability. They want to make sure they have buy-in from the people to ensure that, again, it's able to happen. If it's not able to happen, what resources do we need to make it happen? And that's how a leader thinks. So the biggest differentiation that we see in the workplace is managers. If you see them, a lot of them may not have the skills to lead people. They don't care what drives their folks. They don't see the baselines, what I call the baselines of their people. So they don't know if they're at their best or if they're struggling. If something happens and is adverse to their cause, then they get upset. They're automatically trying to write people up or get rid of people, or, do certain things in a different way, because they're only focused on how it affects them and what they need to do. And then the leader is going to ask, hey, I notice your performance is slipping a little bit. Is there any way that I can support you? What's going on? Right. So that's the real difference and distinction. It's more about that people level, and then where they're looking at that short term versus the long term, process versus people. And you can be both. Right? It's and the listeners probably see it in a linear capacity. You can be both. And it's actually good to have both sets of those skills.
Can a leader be a learned behavior, or is that something you're born with?
You're not born as a leader. It is definitely a learned skill. Some people inherently have better skills in certain things. Like you may be great at problem solving, decision making. That may be your genetic makeup. But if you really want to be a great leader, you have to first understand what your skills and strengths are. That's the first place I recommend people start. So if you know that you're more of an introverted person, you're more of a analytical person, that could be seen as a strength as a leader, because you may step back and slow things down and make sure that you have some of the facts before you make a decision. All right. So we have to look at what our strengths are to understand what best type of leadership philosophies we should be applying. But everyone has the capability to be a leader.
Staying on that same topic as far as leadership in the workplace, Jevon, can someone be a leader without the title, without the president title, executive director title, CFO title? Can you still be a leader at work?
Absolutely, absolutely. As we said from the outset, it's really about influence. It's really about, all right, if I'm not in those roles, how am I influencing? How am I making an impact? So, for example, I see people who are analysts in companies who just come in, but they notice that something's missing and there's an
Mhm.
opportunity there, and they'll say, "Hey, I want to do a program that fixes X thing." That's being a leader. That's stepping in and saying, "Hey, we can optimize this. We can make this better. Here's how I see it going." Everyone has that capacity. And if you're saying right now, I would love to do that, but I have a difficult manager, then that may be a time that you have that one-on-one, handle it at the lowest level. If that's not the thing, don't let that be your barrier. If you really want to make a difference, you're gonna have to find someone else who can give you that executive support and that buy-in, because that's the key. Like a lot of people, I hear it all the time when I coach folks. They say, you know what, I love to do this thing, Jevon, but this single point is my barrier to entry to do that thing. If you really want to make a difference, that first no should never be final. You should always find a way to say, what else can I do to make it happen?
Should you even say the no, like verbally, or should you say something like, "Let me think about it, give me a day," or should you say no, but circle back?
Oh, as the leader, I mean, I
Yeah.
look at it as this. No is a complete sentence. All right. But
Yes.
as a leader, again, you have to provide the why. I really firmly agree, because we're not dealing with children here. We're dealing with adults who have spent time learning a skill, getting experience at this thing, or who are really eager in providing some value. So we should provide, like, hey, you know what? I love your idea, but one, I need more context, or B, maybe we can look at that at Q4, or three, we can't do that right now. We just don't have the manpower, or whatever it is. You should give that context, just so people aren't feeling like, oh, if I bring an idea, they're always saying no to me, and don't even provide any reason why. Because no should be some feedback, and letting people know transparently where you are and where you stand on that decision.
Can a leader be a leader and vulnerable at the same time, or is that a weakness for the leader?
Vulnerability is strength. I say it all the time. That is really what I stand on. That's how I became the leader that I am. I had to step into vulnerability and understand that I need help, that I don't know everything, that I can't do everything, and I can't be everything. So a leader must step into their vulnerability. They must be able to ask for help, must be able to say, I don't know this thing. Can you help me find the answers, and make space for that? If not, you may be successful in the short term, but long term, it's not going to work, especially in these times, because people aren't putting up with that.
Let's talk about leadership in the community, Jevon. Can everyday people, parents, teachers, practice leadership within their community?
100%. You know, I love the quote that says, there are no extraordinary people, only ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I love that quote, because it kind of removes the mystery around what happens in the world. You know,
Mhm.
a lot of these things that we see, they started small. A lot of these inventions, these innovations, these changes to our communities, these nonprofits, they started with a vision. And if you have a vision within your community, start small, start where you are. If you, for instance, you know, in my area in Houston, you know, homelessness is an issue. Am I going online and recording everything I'm doing? No. But one of the things I do is I'll go out there and bring them some food, or I'll bring them some blankets and stuff like that when it's cold, because I want to make a difference. And then I'll go find an organization who takes it up another notch and partner with them to help them find shelter and stuff for them. So you can do extraordinary things in your community, but you just have to really think about it and really have to be focused and intentional in your actions when you're looking to do that. And again, you can't let that first no be the stoppage for you. You have to say, all right, what is that no trying to tell me? Can I find out information and find the jewels in that no? Maybe I need to go ahead and put down a more formal plan, so everything I'm doing is more structured so people can see my vision, and then start to execute. You may have to start by yourself for a little bit and then find someone else who shares those ideas and shares those values, see how y'all can partner together. And that's how you're going to build something great over time.
How does community awareness help leadership within the community?
Community awareness, I don't feel that you can lead if you're not aware. So you must know what's happening in your backyard, in your community, to make a difference in that community. So as we talked about in that example earlier, coming in and identifying where the gap is, and how you can best utilize your skill set to help fill that gap or support that gap. That's going to be the key. And to be honest, there's so many things in just about any community. You can find a way to make an extraordinary impact. And it usually starts with giving your time. Dollars are cool, but I always say the impact really, really is made when you can give your time, because that's your most invaluable resource. And when you're giving your time, you're present, whether it's spending some time with some children, whether it's, feeding the homeless, whatever that case may be, you start to be able to see it on a different level. And you start to, it does something to you to actually kinesthetically be doing this thing. And I venture to say that when you do it and you say, I went out here and did this, here's what I see, to someone else, you have more buy-in from that person. So that creates awareness for them. And then it just causes this ripple effect of awareness, which awareness is the way that it leads to decision. Decision can lead to intent, and intent can lead to action.
Let's talk about leadership in life. Like I stated at the beginning of our conversation, Jevon, I feel like you can't lead in the workplace or lead in the community if you can't lead your own life, whether you're married or single, whatever that space looks like for you. What do you say to that?
Yes, I say that, if you aren't balanced or focused on something suffers. So we see it all the time. Some people they're just so focused in their work that their personal life is non-existent. So I will say that it really is a behavioral thing. Some people, all they want to do is focus on the work. They don't really care about what's going on in the outside world, because they're so tied into whatever that vision is that they have going on. That's all they do. That's their life's work, their life's mission. But if you really want to have both, you have to be able to set boundaries for both. And you have to be able to communicate those boundaries internally and externally. That's the only way that you're going to successfully lead in life and in business. So what I like to say is the first thing you need to do is identify your value set. Are you aligned and moving in the way that your values are? If you have family as a value and you're not spending time with your family, something needs to shift, right? First and foremost. So we need to set that value set. And then when you're talking about leading in life, what does that mean for you? You have to define the definition of what leadership in your life looks like. Is it signing up for ministries at church? Is it just making sure my family is good and I'm providing? So everyone has their own definition of what leadership in life looks like. And you need to establish that for yourself. And then the second part, or third part, I should say, of that is a component of the business. Right? How am I integrating my goals, my organizational or business goals, with my personal goals? So, for example, if I'm saying that in business, for me as an entrepreneur, I want to double my revenue. What does that mean for my time? Because time with family is in my values. So what does that mean for my time? Does that mean I need to double my time as well? Or is there a way for me to accomplish both goals while actually working either the same or less. So that's what I mean by making sure that your organizational and business goals align with your individual goals. Those are some exercises we really have to look into so that we can reevaluate over time. I recommend you doing that at least quarterly, just to check back in to make sure that you're stepping into the life and the business or organization as leadership that you want.
People talk about compartmentalization a lot.
Mhm.
So this question is based off that word. Can someone be a leader at work and not be a leader at home, and compartmentalize the two, or vice versa? Can you be a leader at home and not be a leader at work and compartmentalize the two?
So compartmentalization is hard as a human. We may think that we're compartmentalizing, but it's really tough to just drop this at the door and then walk in and be somebody completely different. But what I will say is it is possible if you've already set the dynamics. So, for example, someone may be the VP of a company or CEO of an organization, but maybe they've decided that leadership at home looks different. They make decisions all day. So maybe when they go home, they're like, I don't need to be head of household. I just need
Yeah.
to, I want to contribute in a different way. And that's leadership for me. So if you're able to, again, define what leadership is for you in these two different dynamics, then I don't necessarily consider that compartmentalization. I consider it stepping into your role differently. Now, I do see when people try to compartmentalize, they'll come into one role. They usually have like a power struggle within. So what happens is if they're not a leader at home, they come into the organization and they're just trying to scorch earth everything or vice versa.
Okay.
So that's why I say compartmentalization is hard, because you start to have an internal struggle that causes you to show up differently, even if you think you're doing a good job.
That's good. That's really good. Okay, Jevon, what is one leadership principle that you live by in your everyday life?
So one leadership principle I live by in my everyday life is to be empathetic. I firmly believe everything I do is centered around looking at things from another person's standpoint. And I live by that because back in the day, I used to have anger issues. I'm just going to call it what it was. And I had anger issues because I didn't understand myself and how what I did, what I said really impacted others. Again, I mentioned that it causes like this domino effect that we may not quite understand. So I
Mhm.
want to lead with empathy. I want to be able to step in, have conversations with anyone, understand their standpoint, and really control my emotions and control myself so that I'm able to lead with a listening ear. I truly feel like you asked me earlier, what are some of the capabilities or skills that a leader needs? Listening would be my second one. Being able to actively listen, to understand, not to respond, to pause and hold back your statements so you can ask better questions. And then that way you can see things from a better standpoint and say things from an educated perspective rather than a biased one.
Man, I do not want to let you go, Jevon. Man, you are dropping some gems on this podcast today.
Oh,
Me
I
and my
appreciate
community
you.
say thank you. We all say thank you.
Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me,
so
Chris. I appreciate
you
this.
you are more than welcome, Jevon. So I have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll say our goodbyes. You
Okay.
have an amazing backstory, and I don't know if it's ever been described as amazing, but literally, you have an amazing backstory. So you go from jail to the military, and I know it's a lot that happens between all of that, and then from the military to having your own consulting firm. And again, I know that a lot happened during that space and time. What is your intention now, just looking back from that jail cell, looking at your mom and her sisters, and your mom puts up the house so you can have a really good lawyer, to military, to having your own consulting firm now? What is your intention in this leadership space?
My intention, Naya Rivera once said that a butterfly can't see its own wings. And when I heard that quote, that's really stated my intention better than I had ever stated it. My intention is to help butterflies see their power in their visions, and understand that they are well equipped to do whatever they are setting out to do, and that you're probably thinking too small. So what I mean by that is, yes, I do a lot in the leadership and the corporate space with entrepreneurs and everything else, but I also do a lot on my free time, because my work affords me the ability to do that with those at hope, I call them at hope, kids who look like me, right? People who don't have the opportunities, don't have the mentors coming into their communities, don't have the resources to go out to other communities to go get that resource. So I want to bring it to them, and I want to make sure that they have the understanding that everything they need is within them. They just need to be willing to step into it.
Excellent. And my final question for you, Jevon, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Yeah, my man Jay Graves, he's a Houstonian as well. So he focuses on like authentic leadership and really that he has something called Mastering the Mirror Framework. And I just see that as a beautiful, beautiful piece that can really add value for your listeners. And I definitely help you get them on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. Just like you said, I believe time also is the greatest commodity, because it's the only commodity you can never get back.
Absolutely.
You can never get back. Yes. So thank you so much for saying yes and giving of your time.
My pleasure, Crystal. Thanks so much for having me. And if anyone wants to connect, they can go to jevonwooden.com and follow me on the socials there.
Absolutely. To my community, thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and learning. You can get Jevon's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And always know, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.